What's up, guys? Today's a fun video. I'm going to teach you all about muzzle flashes and gunshots and why this is a bad gunshot. I'm going to teach you how to make a good one like this. Now roll the bumper. Guns and movies. Haha, nothing will make you feel cooler than popping. Dude, there was something in that. There was something in that. There was something in that. So today we're talking about cinematic guns, and they only will give me a plastic gun to play with because they don't think I can handle myself with real props. I can handle myself. So let's go back to before the bumper. The first thing you'll notice is, yes, the first shot was used with a terrible plastic-looking gun that looks like it has been drugged behind a car or something, while the second one looks a little more realistic and would even look more realistic if I would have painted the tip again so those little orange scratches don't come out. But let's get past that. So yes, this is always going to look worse, and it's always going to feel worse in their actor's hands. Anything that can help your actor feel like they're in a more realistic situation is going to help. You'll see a lot of this on set, and that's not really how a real gun kicks. A real gun, if your arm's locked off like this, is going to hit you a little bit. So the way I teach that to my actors is I have them hold the gun, and I kind of hit the barrel of the gun so they can feel how a kick would feel. I know that looks weird with just one person doing it, but it makes sense with it, two people in the scene. The next thing that was bad about that first muzzle flash is, look at the size of that muzzle flash. That is gigantic. You probably can't even see my head behind it. Anyways, that is way too big for a muzzle flash. A muzzle flash should be about the size of the gun, and that is much bigger than that. Now, if you do get a sloppy kick where it looks like somebody's lazily just slowly pulling it back, there's a way to fix it in post that I like to do. I like to cut a frame right in the middle of that to make it look more jerky. So here, I'll show you. Now look when I pull a frame out of it. It looks like it jerks back a little more and makes it a little more believable. Another reason the first muzzle flash is bad is because there's just a flash at the barrel and it doesn't affect anything else around me. If you really fire a gun somewhere, it's going to affect the lighting of everything around you. Now, another thing that made that a little unrealistic, listen to the sound this gun makes. Notice anything wrong about that? It sounds like that gun is being fired outside, and I am obviously not outside. So make sure your sound effects match your location. But you're not here to learn why muzzle flashes are bad. You want to learn how to make good muzzle flashes. I like to use guns with CO2 in them, so that way it kicks the barrel back and adds for more realism. And a little bit of smoke comes out the barrel and kind of adds to it. Now here's the clean plate for our shot. Now let's jump into After Effects and make some magic. First, I open up Premiere Pro where I've isolated the gunshot clip, and now I need to send it to After Effects by right-clicking the clip and clicking on Replace with After Effects Composition, which will open up After Effects. After it opens up, it'll ask where you want to save it. Now, because there was a transform effect on this clip in Premiere Pro, it transfers in all off access. So go into the effects control and delete the transform effect. Now, because this is a 1080 composition, our 4K clip is way too big to fit into the comp. So I click on the clip and hit S for scale and scale it down to 50%. I locate where the main part of the muzzle flash will go and leave a marker by hitting the asterisk symbol on your number pad. Now I'm going to color correct our log image a little bit so we can see how we want our muzzle flash to look. I apply a curves effect first and make a nice S-curve to get contrast. Then I apply the hue saturation effect and up the saturation. Now we need to import a muzzle flash. There are a lot of great resources for assets like muzzle flashes, like Video Copilot's Action Essentials 2, Rampant Design, Action VFX is a good one, but I'm going to use Triune Films' Muzzle Flash Pack. To import, I right-click in the project bin and locate our asset to bring it into our project. Then we drag it into our timeline and make sure it is above our footage. Now, because this muzzle flash is backwards, we need to flip it around by first clicking the little infinity symbol next to the scale properties, because we don't want to flip over both axes. Then we type in -100 to flip the clip. Now hit the little box where the infinity symbol was to turn back on the scale synchronization. Now this flash is way too big, so we need to resize it to -40 and then place it roughly in the right spot. Now we click the little box which makes this a 3D layer, and then rotate it in the Y-axis so that the muzzle flash is going the same direction the gun is. Now make sure you're only clicking on the 3D handles to realign your muzzle flash, or else you'll get a bunch of wonky action in your clip. Now I'm pre-composing the muzzle flash and renaming it to main muzzle flash. And then changing the blending mode of that pre-composition to screen. Then I duplicate the muzzle flash comp by clicking Ctrl D and move it forward 1 frame and then rename that layer to pre-muzzle flash. Then I make it larger by clicking S for scale and scaling it up to 85, then move it back into place. Now I'm going to create a mask. To do so, I go up to the pen tool and then make a mask with points just around the pre-fire area. Now it's hard to see what I'm doing, so I turn off the visual mask marks by clicking that button right there. Now I click F for feather and feather to 18. I again make sure it is in the exact right spot, and then I lock the main footage by clicking the lock icon so I don't accidentally move that main footage anymore. Now I'm going to solo the pre-flash comp by clicking the little dot next to the layer and adding a CC radial fast blur to the effect. If you don't know how I'm getting that little pop-up every time I get the effect, it's Video Copilot's VFX console. I mentioned it in the last video. All I'm doing is downloading that and then hitting Ctrl-Shift to pop up that little effects box. I place the center point just to the left of the flash, then change the amount to 80. Now because I want the muzzle flash to be a little darker, I click into the muzzle flash layer and duplicate the muzzle flash by clicking Ctrl D, then clicking back into the main comp. Now because we pre-composed this layer, it will duplicate both muzzle flashes in both pre-composed comps. And you can start to see what we're trying to do here. Now I'm going to pre-compose both layers together and name it main muzzle flashes. After that, I hit Ctrl D to duplicate that pre-composition and rename the new one to Muzzle Flash Haze. I then move that layer back 1 frame. I hit the dot to solo the haze layer and then add a fast box blur effect. I set the blur radius to 27, and then I add a turbulent displace effect. I turn the complexity up to 6.2 until it kind of looks like smoke. Now I go down into the turbulent displace effect and click into its transform properties and turn the opacity of the effect down to 70. Then I unsolo the layer to see how that looks. Again, we need to set both layers' blending modes to screen. Now it's time to work on the look of our main muzzle flashes. First, I solo the layer so we can see it by itself. The first thing I want to do is add a solid composite effect and change it to black. This makes it so there is no transparency in the background, as the glow effect has trouble if there's any transparency in the layer it's trying to add glow to. Next, we add said glow effect. I set the intensity to 2.6, then the threshold to 58 and the radius to 221. Then I click into the Advanced tab and change the colors in the Color A and Color B boxes. Color A I set to a light orange and Color B to a darker orange. Then I click the box that says Use A and B color boxes. Make sure color looping is A is greater than B. Now this is also a good time to make sure you are using 32 bits per color channel. You can toggle through in this area by holding Alt and clicking through. Okay, so I unsolo the layer to see how much the glow added to the clip. Looking pretty good. Now I want to add a little smoke. The smoke asset I'm using is from Rampant Design, and it's a free gun smoke layer that you can get from their website. The smoke layer is way too big, so I hit S to scale it down to 40. Also, it's going in the wrong direction, so I hit the little infinity button, and then I hit -40 in the first scale property. Now for me, this smoke layer moved a little slow, so I take out the first 6 frames to make it look a little more explosive. I then place it where it needs to be in front of the gun and turn the scale down even more to 25, and then move it where it needs to go. I make sure to drop it below the muzzle flash layers. I again turn the blending mode to screen, but it's still not subtle enough, so I hit T for opacity and turn the opacity down to 47%. Now I'm going to use an adjustment layer. I go to the layer menu and then hover over New and click Adjustment Layer. An adjustment layer is a layer that whatever you apply to it, any effects, it applies it to every layer below it, but nothing above it. So if I tint everything red, whatever is below that will be tinted red, but the muzzle flash above is not affected at all. I put the adjustment layer above the original footage, but below everything else. Now I'm going to make a garbage mask around myself, the gun, and the flash. Then I click M to bring up mask properties and click on the watch next to mask path so I can animate my mask. Now I'm animating the mask loosely around myself and the muzzle flash, only for the few layers that the muzzle flash is on screen. Luckily that's only about 5 frames. Then I add a curves effect to the adjustment layer. First I bring up the overall exposure, then I click into the red channel and bring that up. Then I click into the blue channel and bring that down, which gives me a nice orangish or yellowish color. I then click T for opacity and turn the opacity down to 30. Now I hit the stopwatch button next to the opacity so I can animate the opacity layer. I go back one more frame and set the opacity to 15%, then one more frame and make it 0. Then I click one frame past the main flash and click 15 and go forward one more frame and kick 0. Now I click F to feather out the mask to 131. Now it's time to add some flash detail back into my face. We open up another adjustment layer and place it above the adjustment layer we just made. Then I trace a rough mask in the area of the face where the most light would hit from the muzzle flash, and animate it over the course of the gunshot. I add a curves effect like I did the last adjustment layers, where I bring up the overall exposure, then click into the red channel and bring up the red, click in the blue channel, bring down the blue, and now I have a color I like. Now it's looking pretty bad as is, but stay with me, it's going to look nice. I mask expand 4 pixels and feather it out 246 pixels. Then I hit T for opacity and turn it down to 40%. Then I animate that opacity to go up and down like we did with the other layer. I animate at 40, 20 to 0 on both sides of the main muzzle flash. Now it's time to take this effect to the next level. It's time to add a solid layer by going up to layer, then clicking new and clicking on a solid. I make the color of the layer kind of orangish. Also make sure it's above both adjustment layers. Now I turn the opacity of this layer all the way off so I can see the footage better. I zoom in by scrolling the mouse wheel and hitting the spacebar while clicking the clip around so I can see my eyes better. I click to make an ellipse mask and make a small little circle in my eye. Then I click Ctrl D to duplicate that mask and move it to my other eye. Position them both where you think the muzzle flash would reflect in my eyes. Now I turn the opacity back on and you can see these ugly yellow circles. I feather both circles by clicking F on my keyboard by 3 pixels. Then while both masks are highlighted, I click Ctrl D to duplicate both of them. I feather the 2 new masks by 11 pixels. I then click into the blending modes and click Color Dodge. That's very important. At this point, I'm making sure I have them exactly where I want them to be. Now I click the opacity of the layer to 58, then click back one frame and make it 15, and then click back one more frame and make it 0. I make sure to do the same thing on the other side of the muzzle flash to make it look like it's animating on the same time as the flash. Now that's looking nice. Even in slow motion, this effect will hold up. That's what I love about it. At the beginning of this episode, right before the bumper, I also added masks to objects that would have been hit with light, like the microphone up on the top and the C-stand to the right of the video. Now once we add a gunshot sound to this effect, let's see how it looks. Very convincing if you ask me, and will hold up much better than just putting a muzzle flash in front of the gun and leaving it at that. This is just one of the ways I do muzzle flashes. Sometimes when it's bright out, like when the sun's out, I don't even use a flash. I use mostly smoke effects. And other times you have to factor in things like wind, but those are things I'll show you in another video. So if you like this video, you know what to do. Hit that little like button over there. If you like filmmaking tutorials in general or just After Effects tutorials, hit the subscribe button or that weird little bell that nobody apparently knows what it does. If you have any questions on this or any filmmaking topic, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I will answer as many as I can. So long as you remember, it's not a competition. Let's all rise in this business together. Or else.